1, 2, 3, 4. Welcome back, everybody. Wait, what do you mean welcome back? Hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new series I'm going to be doing on the channel. Let's see. What kind of introduction should I give for this one? I guess I should start with my regular one. I'm your host, the honest Woobat. Right here we have this beautiful plushie. I will find a way to get this plushie just so I have an actual Woobat. And I'll find maybe like a monocle and a top hat so that way you can see what an actual honest Woobat looks like. Maybe I'll draw that someday. Who knows? Maybe I'll actually put that on the channel, like put a drawing of it. Anyways, that's not what you're here for. What you're here for is, why the hell is this video called? I don't know what I was gonna call that. I'll figure it out in post. Basically, what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna be reading through some fan fiction. Doesn't have to be from Pokemon. It could be for any franchise. Just recommend a story. I will find it online, and I'm gonna read it chapter by chapter, giving my review. Just figure out, just go, hey, is it good? What I thought? Is it good or bad? What's its rating out of 10? And overall, once I finish the story, I'll give my rating of, was it a good story, a bad story, or was it meh? And would I recommend other people to read it? Well, I say read it, but like more like, oh, well, just watch my videos. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm gonna read it out loud, back to the viewers, and we'll just see how it goes from there. So the first story I'm gonna read is called Nuzlocke After Armageddon, which is a Pokemon Nuzlocke fanfiction written by Mangaluva. Mangaluva, which is manga and then L-U-V-A. With that out of the way, I will be right back and we'll get started. Chapter 1. Pokemon 0, Deaths 0. Dear Mom and Saylee, how's everyone doing? Are the houses finished? I'll have to come back and visit soon. Imagine having a roof over our heads every night. I'm near the settlement anyway. I'm just gonna go check out the Indigo area first. There's supposed to be something pretty valuable hidden up there, some kind of treasure. I've gotta find that, right? That could set us up for life. My Pokemon are doing really well. Eric's just evolved. God fucking damn it. Out of the way. Ah! Interrupt my fucking story again. See what happens. Sorry about that. Anyways, I'll probably just edit that out somehow. I don't know. I'll figure it out. Eric's just evolved. I don't know what into. He doesn't look like Flareon, Vaporeon, or Jolteon. I'll ask the old professor when I'm next home. Parun still doesn't want to evolve though. I love you guys, and I'll be home soon. So look after yourselves. Red. Saylee read over the letter for what must have been the millionth time in the year since it had arrived. Then she carefully folded it up, and, after only a moment's hesitation, placed it carefully in the inside pocket of her bag, along with an old photo of her brother. Her mother could keep the photo he'd sent with the letter. It would comfort her more than the letter did. Saylee carefully moved the old computer she scavenged out of the way. It might be useful someday, if they ever got an electric type to provide power for the town, and started packing the cache of supplies that she'd been scavenging for some weeks now. There were some survival supplies, a potion for healing Pokemon, and a filter bottle for water. If she got a water type, she could be assured of clean water, but until then, she would often be stuck with possibly toxic rivers. You could never be sure that something was safe. It had been that way since before she was born. Pushing her glasses up to her nose, Saylee took one last look at her room, their room, a room they'd built with space for both her and her brother, a room he'd never set foot in. Trying not to think of what she might not next be here, then she carefully walked down the shaky stairs. Downstairs, her mother was sitting at the table, crying over a picture of Red and Saylee together as children. Saylee hugged her mother warmly from behind, looking down at the photograph. The two of them had different colorings. Red with black hair and dark red eyes, Saylee with light brown hair and light blue eyes. But they were both pale and looked somewhat alike despite the colors. Saylee wondered what she'd look like now. 3 years since he'd last seen him in the flesh. He had been 15, the same age she was now, and slightly shorter than her. He should be 18 now, and he'd probably hit a growth spurt like Blue had. Saylee wouldn't care if he had shrunk as long as he was still alive. The indigo area is so big and remote, her mother whispered, clutching her daughter's arms. It's so dangerous out there. Do you have to go, honey? I do, Mom, Saylee sighed. Someone has to go find Red. And we finally managed to build a village of our own. Somebody has to make sure we get supplies. Money to tide us over until we can fix up the wastelands enough to start farming. Besides, you can stretch our food twice as long with me gone. Saylee tried to say it jokingly to raise her mother's spirits, but it only made her choke out a sob before turning to her daughter to hug her tightly. Please be careful, Saylee, she sobbed. Please, I don't want to lose you too. I can't. It won't be worth struggling through all this without... Don't talk like that, Mom, Saylee said, firmly stepping back. I'll always come back, and I'll bring Red back too. I promise. I know, honey, her mother sniffed, wiping her eyes and tucking her graying hair back. The stresses of life of a nomad in a ruined land had aged her far beyond her years. She'd had gray hair so as far back as Saylee could remember, as if the color had been drained from her hair into her baby boys. Just go. I love you, honey. I love you too, Mom, Saylee said, turning and walking out over the sleeping blankets spread across the floor, not letting herself look back. It was just late enough in the morning that the sunrise had stopped painting the clouds brilliant colors, and they too had faded back into gray. A few people were working on the fourth hut in their town, built from scratch on the wastelands that no one else wanted. They didn't even have the advantage of being able to scavenge the remains of former cities as others did. Instead, they were clearing trees and buildings with wood, and were beginning to till the land that the trees had been on for farming, reasoning that if it could sustain forests, the land should be able to grow edible crops. It was slow going, with the entire project being dependent on the few Pokemon that Professor Oak had left for protection. And Saylee felt guilty that she was about to take another. Well, if I can catch more while traveling, I can send them back with the money and letters. She stopped to fill her filter bottle at the pond at the edge of town, ready to roll away from the pond if the ripples attracted anything hungry. Taking a moment to tighten the laces on her trainers and straighten her shorts, she set out for the laboratory. It was probably too grand a name for the ruined building, broken stone walls, patchwork with wood paneling and roofing, inside of which they found some vestiges of the old technology and information. It had been enough to convince them that this was a slightly better patch of desolate wasteland than any other. God damn it, fucking why does everything keep popping up when I'm trying to read the story? Okay. It had been enough to convince them that this was a slightly better patch of desolate wasteland than any other which to settle. What towns there were now so undersupplied that none of them were willing to take in any wandering families. Saylee could vaguely remember the endless rejection in those early years. They'd found this place when she was 11. 4 years of work and they had 3.5 solid buildings and an almost safe path to Viridian City. Someone needed to support this town if it was to survive. Someone needed to convince the towns to support each other if anyone was to survive. And someone had to find her brother. She entered the laboratory and headed past the villagers who were feeding some of Professor Oak's Pokemon with their breakfast. Chatting to them about the plans for the day, and started looking for Professor Oak, the oldest member of the community and default headman. He was nowhere to be seen. However, his grandson, Blue, a boy a year older than Saylee, who had grown up with with her and Red, was standing at the back of the room, staring impatiently at 2 Pokeballs on a table. Blue? Saylee asked tentatively. Once they'd been close friends, but he'd been getting colder and angrier ever since she declared her intent to go find Red on her 15th birthday, 6 months ago. He didn't agree with her plan, considering it's suicide, and hadn't reacted well to her refusal to change her mind. He didn't like Pokemon much anyway, and didn't agree with Saylee's idea to set off into the world with one. She never knew these days if he'd be mean and bullying, or if he'd forget his funk for a while and be friendly again. She prayed for the latter and feared the former. Gramps isn't here, he said, crossing his arms, jaw ticking. Look at that old man go. Did you come to say goodbye? Saylee asked half hopefully. You didn't have to. I was gonna come say goodbye to you and Daisy before I left, of course. No, Blue bit out. I came to say that I'm leaving too. If I can't convince you to give up your suicide attempt, you might as well not be completely alone out there. That way, if you get yourself in and over your head, I can haul your stupid ass back home. Saylee stared. She had not been expecting this. Seriously? She searched his deep green eyes for some indication that he was bluffing or pranking her. He looked away, his eyes avoiding hers, and laughed. Besides, somebody's gotta provide support for this place with Red gone, Blue continued snidely. Someone with, talent. Why, you... Saylee bit her tongue and turned to leave, fuming. She could still hear Blue laughing at her. Blue's older sister, Daisy, looked a lot like him, though her long brown hair was much softer and fell into a long bunch rather than sticking up above her head. She was also much, much, much nicer. I'm sorry, Saylee, the young woman said kindly, stirring whatever was in the big pot over a fire in front of her. Saylee wouldn't say it in front of her mother, but the 19-year-old was definitely the best cook in the village. It was currently the practice for the whole town to pull supplies and for her to cook for everyone. She could stretch supplies too, which was another bonus to her cooking. Blue left a little while ago, and I don't know where Granddad is. I thought he'd be there, to be honest. Maybe he met a new Pokemon? Saylee suggested. I'll go look around. Good luck, Daisy said, giving Saylee a one-armed hug while stirring. And I know that Blue's hard work these days. But still, you two, a lot of time you only have each other out there, so look out for each other, alright? I'll see what I can do, Saylee said, rolling her eyes. A year ago, the thought of traveling with Blue might have been cool. But these days, well, a year ago they still had Red. The others in the village wished her luck, but none had seen Professor Oak. Saylee was standing at the edge of the half-safe route to Viridian City, wondering if she'd be safe if she kept to the very edge of the tall grass thickets, when a familiar voice yelled at her. Saylee, what are you doing? Get away from there! Saylee gratefully stepped away from the slightly rustling grass, grinning when she saw the professor. Where were you hiding? I've been looking for you, Professor. An eye for you. Now what were you thinking? Professor Oak fumed. There are wild Pokemon living in that grass! No, really, who'd have thought? Saylee said sarcastically, not particularly wanting to be made feel like a moron on the day she left home. The professor ignored her and started heading towards the lab. Saylee followed and felt her irritation dissipate behind the excitement of finally getting a Pokemon to call her own. About time, Blue said irritably when he saw Saylee and the professor enter the lab. Oak ignored him and picked up the Pokeballs. I kept these from the old days, he said fondly, looking over the two capsules. Don't know if there's any left in the wild. My notes say there used to be a colony of this little guy on top of Mount Moon. But these days, the golem herds that live up the mountains and, well, never mind, I'm rambling. These are for you two, he said, holding them out. You can pick first, Saylee. Gramps, what about me? Blue complained. Oak glanced at his grandson and then back to Saylee. Be patient, Blue. You'll get the other, he said. Saylee's been planning this for months, and you just up and announced that you're leaving last night. You need a little practice like patience, I think. Blue looked furious and fumed silently, while Saylee looked over at the two Pokeballs, one had a fire album and the other water. Fire, red fire, she thought with a smile, deciding that a fire type would be good luck in picking up the Pokeball. Oak nodded and handed the water Pokeball to Blue. I'll take this little guy. Let's see what he is. Opening the Pokeball unleashed a small orange creature, a little over Saylee's knee, with a big round head and a little flame at the end of his tail. He looked up at Saylee and smiled. Hey, he said. You're Saylee, right? The professor told us about you. My name's Chaz, and I'm a charmander. Nice to meet you. Oh, and here's an author's note. Short first chapter, just trying to set up the little background characterization. Saylee's about the only character I'm going to describe physically since she looks like me instead of Leaf. The rest of the characters in Pokemon, I'm going to assume you know what they look like. And yeah, like most Nuzlockes, in this my Pokemon talk. So, first Pokemon get! Name Chaz, species Charmander, nature serious, ability Blaze. I do not own Pokemon, that happy right is Game Freaks. And that was chapter 1 of Nuzlocke After Armageddon. I forgot to read off the description of the story beforehand. Essentially what had happened was there was a great calamity that affected the entire world. For what it is, we're not sure yet. We'll have to find out later in the story. And essentially left Kanto, and who knows what other regions, devastated from a post-apocalyptic thing, hence the title After Armageddon. So hey, it looks like Pokemon can talk. Alright, let's look over the good. Good. It's very good at describing. As a writer, it's good at describing. It's good at descriptive words, and the sentences don't really run on that long. It's just mostly my stuttering over words, trying to get us all on a single take, which is a stupid ass idea. I guess a bad thing for my end, at least, nothing to do with the story, was I forgot to turn off all my messages, so that way it's on Do Not Disturb. So yeah, that's a big whoopsie on my part. Let's see what else is good in the story. I like the concept of it, of being a Nuzlocke that takes place in a post-apocalyptic setting. Kind of reminds me of an apocalypse lock. You know, Apocalypse, I think is what it's called on YouTube. Basically, where they give a scenario of an apocalyptic situation and base the randomized Nuzlocke off of that. I like the idea of incorporating Red into the story, making him a relative to the main character. I think that would be something interesting, and I wonder if they're going to continue on to Soul Silver, or is it going to continue? Or is it going to conclude in this story? If it continues on to say Gold, Silver, Crystal, or Hard Gold, Soul Silver, I wonder how that interaction on top of Mount Silver will end up. What else? Oh, personally, I agree with the choice of choosing Charmander as your starter, so there's that little bit of bias. What else? The idea of Blue resenting the main character, not because he's a prick, but because of the fact he doesn't think it's a good idea to go out there. So he's more acting like a jerk because he cares a lot. So I think that's something I don't really get to see much in a lot of different stories. Now for the bad. They don't really explain in story what exactly it was that happened. There's not much of an intro to the story in terms of of why this is all going on. You're expected to read the description, which in this case is very poor. And when I mean by poor, I mean as in like it's a very bad idea to do that sort of thing when you're trying to read it as well, an audiobook style. Mangaluva is like, I'm gonna assume is British, given the fact that color is spelled color. No, sorry, not color. Bleh. It's spelled with a U instead of an E. Wait, what the fuck am I talking about? It's spelled with a U, which usually is usually how some words are spelled over in England, so I've been told. Like honor, armor, they're all spelled with U's. What else? She says mum instead of mom, so that's also another indication. So I'm going to assume there's going to be a lot of British spellings in there, which I gotta make sure I pronounce right. I messed up saying color. Well, no, I say color right because it's with a U. If it's OR, then it's color. Let's see. Now for the bad. Oh yeah, I'm on the bad right now. There's not much of they didn't give a reason for where Professor Oak was. So that was kind of pointless. Kind of a little setup to that whole, oh yeah, Professor Oak stops you freaking into the tall grass. There wasn't much of a reason for that. As for Pokemon talking in the story, I mean, depending on how it's written, it could be good, it could be bad. I've read a lot of stories where that's really bad and it's handled very poorly. Really shout out, oh, I'll use flamethrower, like the freaking Mystery Dungeon TV show specials. Hopefully they don't do that. An upside to having Pokemon talk is we get personalities. Yay! So we actually care when the Pokemon dies. What else? I guess that's it. Was this a good chapter? It was an alright chapter. It was a decent intro to the story. Just needed a bit of a prelude into it. I'll try and fill in any gaps as I go along. What else? I give this chapter a 7 out of 10. In terms, due to the rating might go higher, may go lower, but for now, 6.5 out of 10. This gets a 6.5 out of 10. For the story. So yeah, that's it for this chapter. Tune in again next time for chapter 2. Until then, I'll see you guys next time.